Majo John Madden Juanito, they call me in Mexico, and I'm sitting in the doorway of my tiny house at the edge of the Acamal Pueblo in the Riviera Maya. There's my yard, humble as it is. I want to make a note about the role of healing trauma in human lives, how central it is. Michael Franti, one of my music mavens, knows a lot more about that than the typical psychiatrist. He sings in one of his songs, "We're all here to heal life's trauma." And we are. In the US, we're taught, we're here to achieve and acquire and consume and have the good life. That's part of why Trump got reelected, because people have been conned to believe that material possessions are what it's about. And if you can't afford the nice next car or the nice next house, you better be mad at somebody. And Trump told you who to be mad at. But one of the villains in American society is the psychiatry industry, because they know nothing about trauma. Some of them these days are trying to claim they're hip to it now, but they're not. They're not. The business of the psychiatry industry is to look at a behavior and give it one of their made-up names like bipolar disorder, and then give you medications. So the combination of a psychiatric diagnosis, which is crippling to most people, be branded forever as somebody who's wrong, flawed, and then giving you medications, which they just grabbed medications that were used for other things like epilepsy, and it seems to help a little bit. And they ignore the side effects, which are devastating. So that's what happened to me. I lost 30 years of my life. I kept working. They weren't absolutely lost, but in terms of being able to enjoy my life, just gone. And then God, life, spirit said, it looks like you've learned what you had to learn from that. Let's get you out of jail free. So I've been happy for 5 years, and my presence is stunning to people and to me. Well, sitting here this morning, and I've been working on presence and my own presence and just being here now, I had two memories come back from my first year of the COVID, my first year after having woken up, my first year of having left Asheville and traveling in a camper van. A psychologist and a psychiatrist who said almost exactly the same thing about trauma. When I woke up and said to my psychiatrist, she was a young PA, physician's assistant, I said, I think I don't need meds anymore. And she said, well, let's try, let's experiment. And when I was almost entirely off them after a 6-month process of gradually weaning myself off a very potent cocktail of 3 different meds, someone in her practice looked at her notes and said, that guy was suicidal a month before you started letting him off his meds. He is going to commit suicide. He will crash. He'll commit suicide, and it'll be on us. And they took me away from her and gave me to a senior psychiatrist there. I had such a wonderful conversation with her. I so much focused on just talking to her that she was stunned by my presence. And she finally said, I think they got it wrong. I think, these days we never would give, I think this is not true what she said, but she said, these days we never would give a psychiatric diagnosis to someone who's in so much trauma, you just can't tell what's going on. I think they made a mistake 30 years ago. So she said that to me, Peggy O'Hara. And just a few months later, I had befriended a homeless street girl named Sam. That was her nickname. And she rode in the camper van with me while she dried out. And after she had dried up off of coke, she was an amazing person, funny, smart, really engaging. And she had slipped away from me looking for her old psychologist. She said, I have to find my old psychologist. And he actually was a prominent member of the Asheville, North Carolina community. He had been on the city council as a kind of a lunatic, wild card, just a problem. But everybody knew his name, which I'm blogging on right now, but everybody knew his name. So I went and found him. And I used although my retirement job in Asheville had been cashier at a grocery store, I had been, in addition to being a PhD psychologist, I was a child psychologist and specialized in that for a while. So when I got to Carl's office, I said, I want to talk to you about Sam, Heather, and I knew her last name. And I got him to talk to me in a way he shouldn't have, really, by playing my psychologist card. I said, Carl, you know me as your cashier at Earth Fair, but actually I'm also a child clinical psychologist. So he talked to me. And he said, wow, she called me her psychologist. I did the psychological workup for her at age 15 when they placed her in the orphanage. Parents gave her up for adoption. And I said, oh, God, that girl, what trauma she's been through. And I said to him, well, Carl, apparently you gave the diagnosis, or somebody gave her the diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenic. I don't think she is. I don't think she's crazy at all. I think it's all drugs and trauma. And he said, well, when someone's in the middle of as much trauma as she was then and is now and using drugs, how can you tell? You don't know what's going on. And that's the truth. That's the truth. That's what arrogant psychiatrists don't face. That they don't know. Because they don't even understand about trauma. They've never been taught about trauma. I was trained as a clinical psychologist in the 70s, and they didn't train even psychologists about trauma back then. I had to learn all that since. And they don't want to face trauma because they haven't worked on themselves. They just are little gods that have been anointed by the medical profession, and they don't know their own insides. So are they going to look at trauma, which could disturb that stuff? Because that was what undermined my psychotherapy for 20 years. For 20 years, I was really resourceful at helping people get out their traumas. But to sit with them, with their pain, no. It would disturb my pain, which I hadn't looked at. So I couldn't do it. I had to stay busy with them. I stayed busy. But the way I let my clients down for 20 years, I had to face that was I never was able to just sit with them and say, wow, you're in pain. That's rough. Couldn't do that with them. But now I can. Now my specialty is being. And whereas the book that influenced my whole generation to turn towards meditation was called Be Here Now by Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, I couldn't do that. I never really learned to do that until the last 5 years, but now being is my specialty. And the only title I claim on my business card these days is Real Human Being. And that's what that's the greatest appreciation the natives give somebody, is to call them a real human being. That's what I am. And you can be too. So it's what we're all called to be. That's my job, is to help people be. My primary coaching product is Being with Majo, or Juanito these days. I don't try to do anything. I don't try to help you. I start from a place of I be me with you, and I encourage you to fully be you. Because that's the greatest gift you can give anybody. Reflect back who they really are, even beyond the personality and beyond the achievements, who they really are. And you only can do that if you know. Exhale, listen to the roosters and morning doves. Come back to the here and now and proceed with my life.